My name's TonyEades, I'll be your MC for today, so if you're sick of me already, you've got me for the whole day, so we're going to have some fun together between now and the end of the day, a lot happening. So marketing is a very big changing place, which is why we're all here to learn a lot more about what's happening in our wonderful world of digital marketing right now. If I go way back, 19th century Philadelphia retailer John Wanamaker said that half the money I spend on advertising is wasted, the trouble is I don't know which half. So you've heard about that. But then, of course, we bring in A/B testing now, so we have a better idea of what works and what doesn't work. Google engineers ran their first A/B test back in 2000 in an attempt to determine what the optimum number of results to display on its search engine results page would be. So that's where A/B testing started all those years ago. But now, of course, we have AI, artificial intelligence, but buyer beware. I found this little story about how things can actually happen and potentially go wrong. A leading brand, who will remain anonymous, created an artificial intelligence program to serve as a basic Twitter user account that could talk to people. So from these conversations, it would learn how to start chatting with these people and become a strong participant in the social media community. Unfortunately, abusive kind of users got hold of this stuff, and soon they began to converse with the program in ways to trick it to becoming racist, ignorant, and even cruel. Within a day, the program was tweeting things like, "We're going to build a wall and Mexico is going to pay for it." So they had to take the program down. So buyer beware, artificial intelligence could take on a world of its own. But we're going to be in safe hands today because we're going to learn a lot about that and more as we go through. Okay, so we're going to kick off with a little bit of what's happening in our digital marketing world right now. It is, of course, changing faster than ever. We're going to start off and kick off today's event with a bit of a kind of digital marketing trends kind of session here. I'm going to facilitate a little bit of a chat up here about what's happening in 2018. Marketing automation company, software company that is HubSpot, is taking a customer-centric approach, as you can see here, by building out this kind of thing that we're calling the flywheel. And it kind of makes sense that they're using data as they move forward to kind of track engagement and drive engagement across the whole buyer journey. And talking to, and we had a bit of this yesterday, an audience of one instead of an audience of many. So obviously it makes sense as we become more customer-centric. It also makes sense in the digital disruptive world that we live in right now when we think about big companies like Uber, who are dominating the kind of personal transport market in 570 countries, and they don't own any cars. And then you've got, of course, Airbnb with 150 million users worldwide, owning no real estate. So a lot of digital disruption happening in our business market. And then also we have a changing market. This is my millennial slide that I like to put up, sort of looking very intuitive about what's going on in this room right now. But obviously we have a mixed market of baby boomers, Gen Xers and millennials. Roughly at the moment, and that dynamic is changing, of a third, and a third. So when we're marketing our message out, we now have to think about 3 different types of markets and how do we engage with them, which obviously makes it a lot different. And that's probably what's driving our conversations, or what we call conversational marketing, which is building up. And things like WhatsApp, WeChat, Messenger, and of course Viber have now come together to boast having more users than the social media platforms combined of Facebook, Twitter, Insta, and LinkedIn. So as you can see, there's a lot of stuff happening. Facebook itself is obviously growing tremendously, and of course Facebook is trying to become our kind of portal on the internet using Messenger and other places like that, rather than Google, for us to actually communicate with brands. And talking of brands, of course, we're, as consumers, coming backwards and starting to think about, well, do we want to be connected with multiple different brands, or do we now want to start coming back? This was a graphic that was added a while ago saying that we're trending towards having 5 brands that we want to be connected to. And the challenge for us as businesses is, are we one of those 5 brands? Because if we're not, we're going to kind of miss out on kind of what happens as things move forward. So there's a lot happening, and then of course conversational marketing is demanding that we have a 24/7 always on brand, and we discussed this yesterday as well. So this is why we're seeing now in our marketing things like live chat and chat bots, so that we're able to kind of automate and enhance customer service and brand experience. So this is becoming more and more important. So the big question is, where are we heading, and are we already there? It's always a big question. And what comes next? So to deep dive on the latest industry insights, trends and predictions for the future, we're going to have a very interactive panel. Please welcome to the stage, from HubSpot, Senior Marketing Manager ANZ, Alyssa Hudson. And also joining me from the corporate world, Please welcome the EasyPay Chief Executive Officer, James Foster. So, a little deep and meaningful fireside chat on what's happening. Well, in the next half an hour, we're going to have a chat, and you guys are going to jump in if you have any questions and stuff like that. So, to kind of set the scene, let's start with you, Alyssa. Let's put you on the spot here. Is there such a thing in this world of digital as non-digital? Let's talk about like the outbound. Does outbound exist still? I know in HubSpot's world you call it inbound marketing and outbound marketing, traditional outbound marketing. Is there still a need for outbound marketing? And if so, how do you connect that with your digital efforts?
I think it depends. I think, like we would traditionally refer to kind of outbound marketing as interruptive marketing. So that might be your TV ads where you get up and go make a cup of coffee whilst that TV ad is on, because it's just not what you're there for, it's not what you're trying to watch, it's not what you're trying to consume. But I think if you're a huge consumer brand whose target audience is 90% of the population, so if you're Coles, for example, absolutely it still has a place, because you can, one, you have the budget to do that kind of marketing, and two, you're trying to reach a real mass audience. Whereas if you're HubSpot, for example, in our marketing, we do not do TV ads, billboards, that kind of thing, because our target market, our buyer persona is much more narrow than the vast majority of people who are going to be consuming those kind of ads. It's just not useful for us, and also it's not measurable. So there are ways that you can connect the dots between offline and online marketing, but you never really get the full picture. So I think it's really a case of like, what are you trying to achieve as a business, who are you trying to target, what kind of budgets do you have, and just weighing it up. The answer is always kind of, it depends, I think. But I think you want to be going for value-adding marketing above anything, really. If you're a Coles, doesn't really apply to you as much, but I think for most of us here, inbound marketing is probably the best route to reach who you're trying to reach and add value.
And I think it's interesting because you say about measuring. That's probably one of the biggest challenges for outbound, is being able to measure the effectiveness of outbound, where it's so easy to do in the digital platform. James, you're CEO of a business, so how much of outbound plays a role in your marketing?
A fair bit, and I think you touched on a point that in the past, particularly with the advent of digital, it becomes naturally easier to measure and track, and therefore it can take more attention. So you can get sometimes lazy and say, well, I can measure a whole bunch of stuff in the digital space, and so that gives more comfort, and I'm going to focus on that. And you really do need to see that whole picture. Obviously, I've got a marketing background, and in the past I've worked for a company trying to market to marketers, so selling customer intelligence software. And one of our best channels was running the traditional good old breakfast briefing events. Even though marketers themselves are digitally savvy, we found the best cut through was actually getting people physically in a room and focused and paying attention, just like you guys are at a conference today. There's lots of things you can do that are online, but there still is that physical need, and it's about, to what Alyssa said, it's about the combination of what's right for what you're trying to achieve. I think any strategy that starts with this is a cool channel, or this is a cool approach, or this is really disruptive and we're going to do stuff, is always going to fail, because you're not focused on, well, what am I trying to achieve in the first place. There's room for experimentation in that, but you've got to focus on what the outcome is.
Yeah. It's interesting because yesterday, for those that were here yesterday, we talked about business to consumer, business to business, but now it's really all business to human, and there's kind of human connection. And this is why events like this, where you can only Google search can only take you so far, and then you kind of need to collaborate, communicate with real people in real time.
Yeah, it still takes. I think that still takes away. There's a bit too some. That's a bit of a trend again. The whole business to human or human to human sort of angle, and you like telling stories and people are involved. But I've been predominantly a B2B background or a B2B2C background. And again, what changes in the B2B context is the decision-making process and how do people make decisions, and it's not at an individual level. So you could engage with one key person, human to human, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be successful in getting the right outcome. So it's still about, knowing your customer is really important, but it's not about necessarily the person, it's understanding the customer as a whole. How do they make decisions? How are they influenced? Where do they go for information? How does that whole process work, and therefore where are you at in that journey?
Yeah. With all the trends that are happening, that obviously we're going to hear about today and we heard about yesterday, Alyssa, how does a business kind of make a decision on which marketing trend they need to adopt and to back? Because obviously you can't do everything at once.
I think echoing that point, like you need to start with what you're trying to achieve as a business, and you need to work backwards from that, figure out what marketing metrics and goals are going to help you to achieve those kind of revenue goals, and then decide if there's a trend or something that can help you get there, that you can run some quick, scrappy, cheap experiments with to see if it's viable for you to invest in. I think, you know, you have to take everything with a pinch of salt. If Gary Vee is telling you to go, you absolutely must go and do this, like, he's not in your business, like, he doesn't know whether you should do that or not. So that you've got to ask why for everything you're doing. It's like, don't jump on a trend just because it's a trend and everyone's telling you should. You need to evaluate it through the lens of like your business and what you're trying to achieve. And that's the best way to decide whether you should or shouldn't start doing something. And I think, again, like adopting these trends, you want to start small and scrappy, like run a quick little experiment, don't invest much budget or time up front, and see how it shakes out against your control. Like, what are you testing it against? What are you trying to improve? Whether it's a channel or a technology or whatever that might be. Run a quick, scrappy, cheap experiment is the best place to start if something's looking like it might be valuable for you.
And I think, James, you're quite a fan of doing sandboxing and trying new things, very innovative brand that EasyPay is.
Yeah, and there's two parts of that, I think, because we all like to use the word being innovative, and particularly marketers, that's what we're attracted to. And you know, we often think that competitive edge means you've got to do something completely different than others are doing, and sometimes that's definitely true. But I think the whole point of experimentation is not only doing something new, but measuring the crap out of it, right? So making sure you're actually understanding what's going on. And again, coming back to the whole, you know, traditional versus digital, when years ago when I took over a marketing team, there was an existing corporate sponsorship in place. It was costing a huge amount of money, and on the face of it, wasn't delivering any results. And I thought, that's old school, it sounds like it's a dinosaur thing, I want to do more digital stuff, I'm going to kill this initiative. But I had at least the good sense to say, well, actually, before I kill it, I don't have enough data. My gut's telling me that it's a stinker, but I need to run it out a little bit longer and start to measure a bit more. And when I did, the results were really surprising, that dollar for dollar, it was actually the best return on investment that we were currently spending at that time. And I ended up doing a 180 and spending way more on that because it had the ability to do so. So again, it's about not just blindly following a trend and not just assuming that something new is going to be better. And also, I think competitively, sometimes just because one of your competitors is doing something doesn't mean you should do it. Getting a competitive advantage sometimes is just about being better at doing the core things than someone else is, and that can get really lost. I see a lot of organisations jumping in to some of the newer stuff, and if they're doing it as an experiment, it's fine, but if they're doing it at the cost of some of their core stuff, then that's not a good thing.
So, next question for both of you, because this is, before we get into some of the trends, because obviously people are itching to find out what you guys are really working on and what you're looking forward to 2018. But a big question is, early adopter or not? All these trends come out, and I know you guys have maybe a difference of opinion here, which is going to be good, but do you jump in early, get in there, you're the early adopters to some of this new technology and these new trends, or do you just kind of sit back and wait a little bit until they iron out the bugs?
I think if, like I said before, you've identified a new technology or a channel, looks like it's going to be promising for your business, and you've run the numbers and kind of got some projections on what you might see as an outcome from that, and you've done a quick scrappy test and you've seen some good results. I think when you're looking at new channels, being an early adopter can be beneficial because, for example, I ran all of HubSpot's experiments with Facebook Messenger as a new channel, and we saw like 3 times the results that we saw with email marketing, and that's because marketers haven't got in yet and ruined that channel. So we're seeing outsized results from that channel because we are an early adopter in it, but we didn't go into that as a rash decision. Like I said, we ran quick, cheap experiments to test out kind of its viability for us as a channel and what it was going to do for our marketing metrics and how it was going to help us hit them. And then after kind of 6 months of running different experiments, different use cases. We then decided that we were seeing enough promising results to invest more time and budget into something like that. So I think that's an example of how being an early adopter on a channel when marketers haven't got in there and ruined it and turned all your audience off ever consuming anything via that channel, that's where it can be a good example of getting in early is a good thing.
Yep. James, a bit more cautious as a business? Or?
Yeah, well, obviously, I mean, EasyPay, we're a fintech, so we're not the slow, cumbersome, large sort of financial services sort of legacy environment. So we've got an ability to move quickly and to test new things out. But purely from a commercial sense, it's as I said, you've got to get the basics right. Also, in that concept, I think to extend from what Alyssa said around channels. You've also got to be really aware in a business of what else you need, right? So, for us, we were finding we've been ramping up our digital marketing activities, and at the moment, AdWords is working well for us, right? And SEO is working well for us in a traditional sort of inbound context that's lower down in the funnel. People are looking for a solution, they find us. And going out to, say, other channels, and we've been ramping up activity on LinkedIn, is not working as well for us at the moment because the missing piece is content, right? And obviously, I'm sure you guys heard yesterday, you heard today, and that's a big part of any digital marketing strategy these days, and a big part of inbound is you need relevant content. And so you can sometimes go a bit too hard and fast just at looking at a particular channel without recognizing, well, what are all the other pieces of my business that I need to have in place? So you've got to be careful that you don't go too quickly, and also by the same token, not write off something because you don't have all of the end-to-end pieces together. When we're in a better position to have better content to share with our audiences, then that means there's probably going to be more investment for us in certain channels over others.
Yep, fantastic. So let's talk about trends, which is why we're here. Trends in terms of, 2018 is almost gone, so we're obviously going to be looking at what we're doing for the rest of this year and into next year. Just to kind of put that semi-crystal ball out there, which doesn't have to be that far in the future. Let's start with you, Alyssa. What do you kind of work? You mentioned Messenger. Chatbots is becoming a big thing in terms of conversational marketing. What else are you kind of seeing trending?
I think rather than channel or technology, there's an underlying thing where I feel like the businesses that are going to win out at the end are the ones who are optimizing for convenience. As consumers, as humans, we are incredibly impatient, and increasingly so. New technologies have enabled us to get what we want when we want it through the channel of our choice. And I think that if you're a business that's not optimizing for kind of convenience and to meet people where they are and meeting their expectations in terms of how quickly you respond to them, how good their experience is with you as a business, how easy it is to do business with you, I think if you don't optimize for that, you're going to lose the interest of your audience very quickly, because there are a ton of companies that are doing that very, very well. And I think your channels and your technologies layer on top of that. So it's like chatbots, for example, they optimize for convenience, because if someone's trying to contact you as a business out of hours and you've not got a human there to deal with them, they still want an answer. They don't care that you're not online. And a chatbot can help supplement that and help you meet those expectations of the business. So I really think it's about understanding the expectations of your audience and building on what kind of trends you follow on top of that. But I think, generally speaking, a trend is, I don't even know if you would call it a trend, just people expecting immediate answers from you as business, expecting their dealings with you to be frictionless.
And I know I was just going to say, so obviously from HubSpot's perspective, having this kind of MarTech platform that now covers the buyer journey from end to end. So you've got the marketing hub, the sales hub, and then recently now the service hub, which is sort of coming into play, is to be able to have, I suppose, software helping you do some of the heavy lifting. So you can't be everywhere anytime, 24/7.
Exactly, and you need to be able to connect the dots between that customer journey, which having kind of an all-in-one, having all your systems, all your tools speaking to each other in a really seamless way allows you to provide a contextual experience. So if someone's kind of called your support line and had a conversation with a support rep or whatever that customer service person is, and then they live chat with you later on your website, you need to be connecting those dots. How annoying as a customer to have to explain yourself all over again. And that's why it's important to have your services technology connected to your CRM, connected to your marketing technology in case that person has also messaged you in Instagram or on Twitter. You need to be able to connect those dots to provide a convenient, frictionless experience for someone. And having, that all-in-one tools speaking to each other is kind of the only way you can really have that timeline of activity.
So James, how is EasyPay as a business now, kind of like trying new trends or looking at new trends? Where are you shaping?
At the risk of sounding uncool, and I'll put it out there, I hate chatbots. I hate them with a passion. I think for me it's because there's a disconnect between that promise that sort of Alyssa's just mentioned to and the actual reality. So, there are bits and pieces out there. So there's that ability to chat with people online in various channels. Theoretically, there's the ability through AI to have a better understanding of what people need and personalization. And yes, the dream of that is rolling it all together to automate. Now, some people, to be honest, don't actually have that intent of giving the customer a better experience. A lot of chatbots are around automation are quite frankly just about lowering cost. So it's about efficiency and cost drivers, not actually improving customer experience. And again, to my previous point, I think there's a lot of businesses out there that have implemented either chat, not even chatbots, but chat full stop, and then chatbots that have a really negative customer experience. So you engage with them, you get no answer, it's the stupidest bot in the world, it's far too simplistic, there's no value-added benefit, and in fact, it actually can decrease, right? I personally enjoy online channels, and if someone's got chat, even with a representative, I'm going to use that as a preference to picking up the phone. But if I have to be on that for 16 hours waiting for a chat consultant, or I get bounced between 6 different people, only to then be told, actually, for that specific issue, I can't deal with you, you've got to call our call centre, here's the number, see you later, it's a really negative experience. So I think in that context, those overall trends, there's that hint of a promise out there, but you've got to be really careful about focusing on what you should be focusing on. I think the other trend that we're definitely seeing in terms of the tools we use, and you talk about the MarTech platform, and there's this sort of explosion and then consolidation of players in the market. And I think the challenge there is that there are certain things that become commoditized. So, to some extent, CRM and email marketing and things that are mature start to become commoditized. There's not as many players in the market there. And it makes a huge amount of sense to have a single platform that you can see end to end. But then the challenge is with these new technologies, be it AI or chat or whatever, they then start to become very specific to an industry level. And so, there are lots of providers out there that deal just in the fintech space. And so they talk to me specifically about what they can do for me. And there's an attraction there because I'm trying to, again, differentiate. But that then ends up in that more spaghetti. So there are these new things that I then have the big challenge of plugging into my core platform, and then that hurts the whole reporting and insight. And even then you get that next generation wave of new data connection platforms that they say they can solve that problem, but they don't connect to everything. And then the wave continues. So you're always playing this catch up between, do I go for that innovative new thing, meaning that there's going to be some sort of downside, it won't plug into X, it won't plug into Y, and where do you draw the line there? And I think that's going to be a constant evolving challenge, and we sometimes as marketers fool ourselves that it's all going to be okay in the next 6 months, and that promise of the next technology wave is going to solve all of our problems. And if you don't get your housekeeping right, if you don't get the basics right, you're basically stuffed.
Yes. We're going to open up for questions. Dan's going to grab the box. So just put your hand up if you've got a question. Interesting comment about the chatbots, because I think that's really, you've got these conversational bots which can be challenging. I agree, because they kind of try and have a conversation and it doesn't quite work out. And it becomes conversation to frustration. But then you've got transactional bots, which I know HubSpot have had some success with in terms of like booking into an event like this, where you can go online and you can go through an automated process to actually book your ticket. I think conversion rates have been pretty strong.
Really,
in transactions.
yeah. I think the chatbot as like a all-seeing, all-knowing, all-doing solution to any of your problem. Yeah, technology-wise, we're just not there yet unless you're a huge behemoth of a company who can afford to have a full AI solution there. We absolutely do not have that. We never did, and we still saw really good results with these kind of more transactional use cases. So for example, one thing we did was instead of having someone have to go on mobile from a Facebook ad to a landing page to a 14-field form to have to register for an event or a webinar, we, in Facebook, turned that form into a conversation and had, when you clicked on that ad, it opened up in Messenger, and there was a transactional bot there that said, hey, let's get you registered for this event or this webinar. What's your name? What company do you work for? And as we were doing that, that was zapping across to our CRM, that information. So I think that's and we saw our cost per lead or cost per registration reduced by, I think it's about 5 or 6 times using that ad type, and just a nice interactive experience. We had people tagging their friends in the comments, like, you have to try this way of registering an event, like, this is so cool. It's kind of like a bit of a delight moment, and that's because it was reasonably easy to set up something like that. It's not AI, it's a very simple branching logic bot that has a transactional use case. So it's like the expectation of what it can do from an audience perspective, people interacting with it, are quite low. It serves one purpose. It's there to get you registered for this event, and that's exactly what it does. So I think it's about setting expectations as well, like when you're using this kind of thing. It's very difficult to build an all-seeing, all-knowing chatbot without having millions of dollars to fund it.
Let's ask in the audience, who's actually using chatbots in their marketing right now? 2, 3. So obviously it's a new, so that could be a good way for people to start, a very simple kind of transactional
really
kind of through Messenger or something for, ordering a product or a trial or something like that. Any questions? Because we've got 5 minutes or so with these guys up here.
Yeah, g'day. Thanks for the discussion, very interesting. I've been looking at, for a little while now, I assume it's a transactional bot that the ABC uses for to get people to subscribe to its news alerts. And I would like to implement something similar in order to engage with a very targeted audience. So we're medical professionals who are often bombarded with material. So we're trying to get them to come to us and subscribe to news from us, either about our organisation or relevant to their industry. And I just wondered if you'd heard of other people doing that sort of thing, what kind of costs might be involved?
Yeah, so I actually built a very similar thing for HubSpot. So we have subscribers to our kind of email, they get content from us. This is separate to our blog. This is like in Australia specifically, Australia and New Zealand. They get ebooks, webinars, that kind of thing. You might have received them. We basically did a 6-week trial where we set that up where you could subscribe via Messenger as an alternative to get more like instant updates. And we wanted to see on our end if, one, people were interested in it as a channel, and 2, if it would be any more successful for us in terms of cut through, like open rates, click rates, people engaging with that content, than email, which for most marketers is a declining or plateauing channel just because of the amount marketers gone in and abused it, really. And that was super easy. I am not anywhere near to being a developer, could not be further from it. It's very simple, you just sign up to one of the free chatbot building softwares like ManyChat or ChatFuel, and you build out a simple branching logic. You can tag up people if you want to segment that audience by interest or whatever. You can attribute tags to them based on their responses to the chatbot. Really, really easy to set up. And you can have, say if you've got a blog and you're producing content that you want people to subscribe to, you can have a button on there saying subscribe via Messenger. And weekly or however often you push out your content, you can send it to that subset of people via the channel that they've chosen to receive it. And what we saw in terms of engagement rates absolutely dwarfed email. We had, I think it was a 79% average open rate in this 6-week trial period of people who self-selected to get the content via that channel. Whereas email, we see about a 32% open rate. Click rate, same, it was 13% in Messenger, 2% in email, kind of pretty standard for email. So yeah, I give it a go. It's pretty easy to set up. It's free to set up as well. And if you're a mere mortal like me, you can definitely do it. You don't have to be a developer.
You don't need to be a developer.
No.
Yeah, just jumping in there, and I feel like I'm the curmudgeon-y one at the end of the panel, but I'd also say, and I'm sure you're already doing it, is just make sure your audience is in that channel and uses that. So we recently did a bit of a review of our segments, and we had a particular segment, and I come back to we were looking at ramping up LinkedIn, and we just did a sanity check with a segment of our existing customer base, and only 14% of them were on LinkedIn. Shock horror, right? As people in this room, I'm pretty sure it'll be 99.9% ranked. And sometimes you can just make these assumptions that, well, people are going to be using that channel, and that definitely changed our attitude for that particular segment, that we weren't going to use that channel. So definitely just make sure that people are in that channel that you're choosing.
And that's where experiments come in, right? It's like, just try it. If it's low cost and low time to set up, try it, run a quick test for like 6 weeks like we did. Didn't take a ton of my time to be able to do that or manage that, but it then, if it shook out that like, yes, this is a viable channel for us, but like for you, it might not. And then, you've not wasted too much time, budget, energy into that channel. You run these quick little tests to see if it's going to be useful for you or not, and kind of test those assumptions, like you say, like actually look into what's happening there.
Do we have another? Oh.
I was wondering if there are any trends around the ability to look at cultural background in marketing so that you can actually target better or communicate better looking at the cultural background.
What do you mean when you say cultural backgrounds, just to clarify?
Like our audience, we're a ski resort in New Zealand. We have New Zealanders that we want to interest or be able to talk to them in their language, and I'm not talking in English or Hindi or whatever, but purely looking at their background, that they understand what we're trying to offer. So are there any technologies that are emerging from perhaps AI that they say, okay, this is a better approach to bring our message to those backgrounds?
I guarantee you there's a startup that's doing it. That's what I can definitely guarantee. There will be someone in the world that's exactly got the product that's solving that problem that you're articulating. Whether or not it's very good or it's used by anyone's a different story.
Yeah, I don't think it's as complicated as it might feel like it is either. Like, if you strip it right back to what you're trying to do is connect with a certain segment of people. So you do buyer persona research, you interview your ideal existing customers or the people that you're already connected with. You build a profile of who these people are, what their challenges are, what their goals are, what kind of channels they use most commonly, and you do that kind of research up front. And then you've got actually a lot of existing tools that can help you target them best. So like the audience insights you get in Facebook are super powerful. And you can build like lookalike audiences off the back of your existing customer base to target those people. If you're looking at like what language you use to connect with them, I think a lot of that is trial and error, like writing different copy and testing it against something different. And there are means to solve that problem already. If you kind of just bring it back to basics and what's already available to you a little bit, it's possible to get that insight now, I think, anyway.
Just on that, actually, if I was this morning on the way in here, I follow Mark Ritson on LinkedIn. If you don't, I suggest you do. He's a controversial marketing voice in Australia, but he always shares some pretty funny stuff. And there's a Deloitte study that's just come out about particularly around mobile penetration. So one of the aspects was mobile usage across generations, and we all talk about millennials, and one of the interesting things there that they were showing in terms of mobile adoption and usage is now drawing parallel between the sort of three age brackets, the 21 to 35, 35 to 45, 45 to 55. And so they've come up with this new term of trying to combine millennial, Gen X and Gen Z, of millennial XZers or some stupid name like that. Or as Mark Ritz had put, another way to describe that is adults, right? And so there is actually this challenge with hyper-personalization and segments of one that sometimes you look at it and go, actually there's a pretty common thread, particularly of who you're trying to sell to. So you can actually go really the other way a bit too far and make too many assumptions that there is this clear difference. And we like the story, and it's sort of sticking with us that, millennials are different. And that might be true in some cases. And as I said as well, how your audience uses certain channels, you need to understand. But I think there's also that gotcha sometimes that we just assume
assume that everyone, there is this stark difference. You know, when I'm on the train, it doesn't matter how old people are, everyone's on their bloody phone, right? So,
We're all using the same device and we're all adults, so it's not that complicated. We're out of time, folks, so please join me in thanking our